Should I choose Celpip or should I choose IELTS? There has been a lot of discussion around IELTS and Celpip tests. So with this video, I want to share some distinctions between the two to help you make a decision. Keep in mind, I'll be talking about the general module of IELTS tests because in most cases, people need to take the IELTS or Celpip for immigration purposes, and you won't be taking the academic module of IELTS for that. To begin, I think it's good to look at the administration of the test first because it may eliminate one of the options for you, which means the choice is already made for you. First, let's talk about the location. The availability of Celpip tests is a lot more limited compared to IELTS. The test is currently available in Canada, the Philippines, Dubai, India, and some cities in the US. So depending on where you are, it may not be practical for you to take the Celpip test. In comparison, IELTS is available worldwide. Second, how often can you take the test? Some people may have a specific deadline. In this case, IELTS seems to be the better choice. Why? Because you can take it as often as you can. In contrast, you can only take Celpip every 30 calendar days. So if you're pressed for time and not sure if you can get the score you need right away, IELTS may be the better option in this case. Next, the cost. Well, Celpip used to be somewhat cheaper, but the price gap has been shrinking that I think the cost should not really be the deciding factor anymore. This video is made in December 2018, and at this time, a Celpip test will cost $280 plus tax, and then an IELTS test costs around $300. And I said around $300 because it varies depending on where you take it. So the costs are almost the same. Lastly, the length of the test. Both of them take roughly 3 hours. What makes it different is that in Celpip test, you will do all the different parts of the exam in one sitting. In IELTS test though, you often have to do the speaking portion separately. This can be done on the same day or not on the same day. My advice is, if you have a pretty busy schedule, Celpip may be a safer choice in terms of making the time to take the test. If you'd like to show your support to our channel, please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. After you subscribe, you can turn on the notification by clicking the bell icon to be the first to know when we upload something new. Now, let's delve further into the test itself. As you know, they will test you in 4 different components: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. Let's start with the listening portion. Celpip is definitely longer, and there are more tasks for you to complete. The questions are strictly in multiple choice format, whereas IELTS also has short answers in addition to the multiple choice questions. The other thing that you may want to know is the accent they use. The speakers in the Celpip listening test will use a Canadian or American accent, or it may be someone with a slight French accent too. But in IELTS test, you will hear different accents. My point is, if you have a test soon and you think listening to different accents is difficult, then you can go for the Celpip test. I just think getting used to an unfamiliar accent in a short time is somewhat challenging for most people. How about the speaking portion? Well, in speaking, the biggest difference is the examiner. When you take a Celpip test, you will be speaking to a computer. Your voice is recorded through a microphone. Even though it's rare, sometimes technical difficulties with the computer may occur as well. On the other hand, you will be talking to a real person in the IELTS test. Some people feel that they're more relaxed and more comfortable in the situation because they can see the other person's expression, body language, and so on. And in the Celpip test, because you're speaking to a computer, the responses are more like monologues as opposed to a conversation in the IELTS test. Celpip will have 8 different tasks. If you want to know more about them, you can watch our previous videos. And IELTS only has 3 different tasks. One other thing I'd like to mention is the setting. Sometimes people overlook this factor, but it might be useful to know before you choose between the two. When you go for the speaking test in Celpip, you will be in the same room with other test takers. Even though you're given a set of noise-canceling headphones, some people feel that the noise from other test takers can be somewhat distracting. They may be typing on a keyboard or also speaking to their microphone. You won't have this issue in the IELTS test because the test is done individually. At the end of the day, if you're not a fan of talking to a computer and you feel that noise can easily distract you, then you should take the IELTS test. Reading. With regards to the content, I'd say that the Celpip test often has Canadian-related content. If you have been living in Canada, it may be something that you've heard of, so you may feel more comfortable with the topic. Having said that, knowledge of Canada or its culture is definitely not necessary to answer the questions. In IELTS tests, the topic is more general. Another difference is the delivery of the test. In Celpip, everything is done through a computer. That means you'll be reading from a computer screen, and in IELTS test, you'll be reading from paper. A quick note, in case you haven't heard, it seems like the administrator of IELTS has been testing a computer-based test as well, so this may change in the future. Once again, the questions in the reading portion for Celpip are also multiple choice questions. But with IELTS, you will face different types of questions, for example, true and false questions or short answers. As far as the reading portion, I would say it's a toss-up. The difficulty level is quite similar, but with IELTS you get paper that you can write or scribble on, not just reading on the screen. So the choice is yours to make. Lastly, the writing portion. I'm gonna say that they're somewhat similar, except Celpip may be slightly shorter. Both have two tasks. In Celpip, you're writing a letter for the first one, and for the second one, you're writing a response to a survey question, which can be answered in either a letter format or an essay format. In IELTS, you're going to write one letter and one essay. Here's what you may want to consider. If you prefer typing on a keyboard, then Celpip may be the test for you. The computer also comes with a spell checker for those who think they're a terrible speller. But you still need to be careful when you're typing because you may still make mistakes that the spell checker can miss. For example, you want it to type kind versus kid. You want it to type tent rather than tent, and so on. When you take the IELTS writing, you have to write by hand. Personally, I'm not a fan of writing by hand. I rarely write by hand these days, and I know my handwriting isn't the easiest to read. So for me, I'd opt for the Celpip test. So, there you have it. Those are some of the main differences and similarities that you will find between IELTS and Celpip. Now, this is probably the question that most people want to know the answer to. Which one is easier? Honestly speaking, if you ask different people, I guarantee you will get different answers. But I would say that if you have a short time to prepare, Celpip may be easier to practice, especially the speaking part. You know the question formats already, and if you spend some time to practice with some sample questions, you can get more comfortable fairly quickly. If you don't know where to start, I recommend watching our previous Celpip speaking videos. The other question that I often get as well is the score. What score do you need to immigrate to Canada? Well, the requirement may vary depending on your circumstance. So this information I'm showing you here is just the general guideline. If you're applying under the Federal Skilled Worker Program, you need to get CLB 7. And you can see here what that translates in terms of IELTS and Celpip score. And if you're applying under the Canadian Experience class, you will need CLB 7 for job category 0 and A, and CLB 5 for job category B. That's all I'd like to share at this time. Let me know if you guys are interested in a test guide for the IELTS test. You can like the video and make your request in your comments. If you find this information useful, please share this video to your friends or family members to help them make the decision that's right for them. Lastly, don't forget to subscribe and like the video before you leave. Ciao!